Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet you. Glad you came too. Like you said when you know you got moves. You spit game and you know you spit.
Hello and welcome back to the Fast Lane Collective. I'm your host Daniella and today I'm joined by Yasmin to talk all things F1 Academy in Zandvoort. But firstly, Yasmin, how are you?
I'm great. I'm glad to be back talking about F1 Academy. This is our second take of this, guys, because we had some technical issues. We were really getting into the swing of things, and then Danielle's Wi-Fi just cut out. So yeah, we need to get back into the groove. It's weird like starting this all over again because I feel like we've literally just done this, but excited to see you again. Excited to talk about F1 Academy. And how are you, Daniela?
Yes, I'm good now that I've sorted out all my Wi-Fi issues. It does feel a little bit like deja vu because we're kind of starting off in the same way that we started before. But that's consistency, and we like that, and that's key to F1 and F1 Academy. So maybe it's key to this podcast too. But moving on to all things F1 Academy, we previously were speaking about how there's been such a big gap between the last round and this round. So last round was, I think, the 15th of June, and then this round was at the end of August. That is a long time to go without racing. Yaz, do you think that this is detrimental to F1 Academy in terms of viewership, but also in terms of the drivers having limited access to driving these cars?
In terms of viewership, I mean, we live in such a fast-paced world when it comes to any type of media, sport, so it's a shame that, we had so many people talking about F1 Academy and all the races that we have, and then to have that big gap, I didn't hear really anything about F1 Academy or the drivers themselves, so it's a bit of a shame to see a dip, and hopefully the viewership for Zandvoort was picked back up again, especially when we've only got two more circuits to go to, which is technically 4 races. I'm going to say 2 races, but we always have the extra races. But when it comes to the drivers themselves, I mean, I know that other drivers compete in other championships, but I think to not have that consistency of being in the car, then there's only so much you can do in sim racing as well. They must have all felt a bit rusty. I mean, especially coming back to Zandvoort, which is such a tricky track, so twisty, turny, huge embankments. So to come back to especially a track like this with the weather conditions we had as well, difficult, really difficult. So you've got to kind of give it to these girls this weekend for, going out, doing what they do and performing well.
Absolutely, and everything you've just said is so true. Like, they have come back to a track that's extremely tricky, but also being away from championship for such a long time is going to be detrimental to their driving. Like, it's not like any other sport where you could go out and practice. If you're not on that track that weekend, that's it. You just don't have another opportunity. Yes, you can get involved with other championships and become a development driver, like in Formula E, for example, but you're not going to be on track consistently. Some of the drivers, such as Ella Lloyd, has been in British F4 at the same time as F1 Academy, which has been helpful for her because then she's being able to get out in another F4 spec car. But they're not having that consistent week in, week out being in a car like you do in Formula 1, and having such a big gap like this is going to make it challenging when you do get back in that car. And then viewership as well, you're going to kind of lose out on fans because things aren't consistent and you have to wait a while for a race. And in this day and age, people don't have a good attention span. Everyone's attention span is so short, and if things aren't quick turnarounds, then people just get bored. So I think it could also be a little bit of a bad thing for the championship because they don't have this constant viewership. They can't rely on fans to be there for every race because there's such big gaps that people lose interest. Storylines get missed. That there isn't that much that F1 Academy can post about in these big gaps. And I wonder if maybe they need to kind of reassess how they do this and look at championships like Formula E, I know that I go on a lot about Formula E. It is the championship that I have been working on for the last 2 seasons, so I will be mentioning it a lot, and I do apologise, but they look at the calendar from like December, January to July, August time, and have that kind of first chunk of the year dedicated to their racing series, and then have the rest of the year off. And I think maybe something like that might be useful for F1 Academy if we kind of have a look at like kind of reducing those gaps. They go such a long time without racing that maybe it'd be better for them if they could reduce those gaps, and then the second half of the year they treat that as their off season, and they're like back in the gym and where they can, being with teams in sims, in development roles, and just kind of work on the off season of like progressing in terms of being an athlete, and then have the other half of the year of them dedicating to racing. I don't know if that would be any better. I'm not sure. Like I'm not a racing driver myself, so maybe other drivers might disagree with that. But I think having such big gaps, you're going to kind of lose your momentum a little bit. And I think that was proven this weekend. They've come back after 2.5 months off. As we said, tricky conditions. It's a track that is so challenging with twists and turns and embankments. Like, it's not an easy circuit by any means. And then going into qualifying, it rained the night before. The track was starting to dry out, but it was in that kind of in-between phase of where like some parts of the track were a little bit dry, but some of the parts of it were really damp. And that did naturally affect their performance. But as the track dried out, things got better. And Maya Weug overall was fastest, which meant she was then taking pole for the second race. But she was less than 0.04 of a second ahead of Alicia Palmosky. So this just proves that even though they are having big gaps, the competition is still there. And I would actually say this is one of the most competitive seasons of F1 Academy. This is the first time I feel like we've really got to see the championship fight still continuing right into the very end. Like, as you've said, we've got 2 rounds left. At this point in last year's season, we kind of knew who was going to win, but this year it's still all to play for. And when you've got that competitiveness at the front of the grid, especially for qualifying, that's making this a whole lot more interesting. So I find that, having such good, strong talent at the front of that field that's what's making this such an exciting season, because you're not having the same driver win every single race. But moving on to the race, Tina Hausman crashed in the first race. Now, for me, she's been a driver that I've seen a massive difference in. She has been a lot more consistent, a lot more top 10 finishes this year. And this is actually her first DNF of the season, which in comparison to last year is very good, because last year she did struggle a little bit. And Yas, what do you think about Tina Hausman's progress over the last 2 seasons? And do you think that this year she's definitely made a change and upped her game?
This is what I cannot speak. This is what F1 Academy should be like. We should see drivers improving. Like, yes, last season it was kind of a write-off for Tina, but this season she is really improving. And I know, again, she had that early crash and it caused a safety car and she DNF, but that from the entire season, that is the only thing that she's really had like a big problem, like this one big crash. I'm just happy to see her improve, because when I feel like whenever we see a female driver not doing well, the comments on like some of their own personal like Instagram accounts can be really, really harsh. I saw some like comments about Tina, which just it's not what this series is about, or any driver, whether you're in Formula One or not. I don't think you should be like so critical to the point it's just nasty. So I'm glad that Tina's proving everyone who's doubted her wrong. And I just can't wait to see where she goes in her career. Hopefully she has a very fruitful career. And we've got 2 more circuits to hit, so hopefully she gets up the grid. And I'm definitely going to be keeping my eye on her, because every time I watch even just the highlights, her name is constantly mentioned. You constantly see her having these battles. So go Tina. I'm a Houseman fan.
Yes, as you said, her name is getting mentioned more and more, and for positive reasons too. So I'm excited to see kind of where she ends up finishing towards the end of the season. But moving on to kind of a big battle, I would say, was Chloe Chambers and Ella Lloyd, both of them are quite keen to get on the podium as much as they can and stay in that fight for the championship, especially Chloe Chambers. Now, this was not a weekend that I think Chloe will want to remember and have fond memories of, because although she did well, and I think she finished in 5th in the first race, the second race, not so great. But I find it really interesting that she is having battles with the likes of Ella Lloyd, because Ella is actually a rookie for the season. Now, she has been in F1 Academy as a wildcard entry, and like she's raced, as I said earlier, in British F4. Like, she is a good name, and like she's a very strong driver. But again, like, being so new to championship and being really far up the grid in these really strong battles against drivers who have been in F1 Academy for the last 2 seasons, I find like just incredible, to be honest. But unfortunately, the two of them did have contact, and this, I feel like, is a little bit detrimental towards Chloe Chambers. She knows that this is her time to prove herself. She has only got 2 rounds left until she is out of F1 Academy, and if she doesn't then prove herself, then she's not going to like look desirable for other championships to take her on. And we're at the point of the season right now where, as I said, we've only got 2 rounds left, and that means that they have only got limited time in that car left to get the likes of other teams and other championships to be interested in them. So the pressure definitely is on. We're at this point now where we don't know if you win the championship where you're going to go. F1 Academy originally said that the whole premise, I guess, of their championship was that it would allow female drivers to progress from F1 Academy, which is F4 spec cars, into Formula 3, into Formula 2, and then into Formula 1. Naturally, that hasn't happened because of funding. Classic. To get into an F3 seat, you need money. But teams and companies and sponsors don't want to invest in female talent because they don't think they're good enough. So then these drivers are then not getting the funding that they need to step into that next step. So last year, GB3 and Rodin Motorsport announced that they were going to allow the champion of F1 Academy to move into GB3, which is an F3 spec car series. This worked in hand for Abby Pulling. She won the championship. She already was with Rodin, so I feel like it kind of was set up for her. And she then got to progress into GB3 this year. She's then gone on to get her first podium a few weeks ago and is doing really, really well. But we don't know right now what's going to happen with whoever wins the championship this year. We've not heard about it. And that's the problem that I have with F1 Academy, is that it doesn't kind of think far ahead. They haven't organised what is the prize of this championship. And every year it's been something different, because the year before, when Marta Garcia won it, she then got a seat at Freca. So there's not like this consistent plan of like where these drivers are going to go. And I wonder if that is starting to kind of weigh on some of these drivers' minds, and like they're kind of like, well, if I win this, like, what's going to happen next? Am I going to have a seat somewhere else? Am I going to look desirable to other people because I haven't done it in the same way as like Abby did, who was extremely dominant? Like, this has been a harder challenge this year. Like, I don't know if I've actually got a seat anywhere at all. Like, is this going to be the end of my career? Because like Marta Garcia came out, I think last year, saying that, you know, she's having to take a break from racing because she can't get a seat anywhere else. She can't afford a seat anywhere else. And we want F1 Academy to set these drivers up for success. But right now it's hard to see that when we've only had really one driver have success, and this is their first season outside of it. So we haven't even got to see the full extent of it. Marta Garcia is now 2 seasons out, and we've seen that, you know, she has struggled. So I don't know what the plans are with F1 Academy, but I think they need to start thinking about what their goal is, because it's very clear the goal has changed. It is no longer Formula 3. Maybe it is Formula 3 spec cars, but they need to maybe work with another championship to progress these drivers. So Yaz, I wanted to ask you, do you think that these drivers are kind of thinking like, I want to win this, but also what is the point? Because I don't know where I'm going to go next. And also, if you don't win it, like, and you know this is your final season for the likes of Chloe Chambers, Doriane Pin, Maya Weug, they're thinking, where am I going to go next? Where do you think their careers will progress to?
This is such a, like, I couldn't imagine being in that position where it's such a tricky headspace to be in. Of course, you want to win the championship. Of course, you want to show all the skill you have and impress the crowd out there. But then again, when you don't even know what your prize is, where you don't know where your career is going to go, that is tough. And the thing is, I don't know where these women's careers are going to go. And that's the thing that upsets me the most. I can't be like, oh, well, I think they're going to go here and here, because there's still this really harsh stigma against women with, why should a company invest money into them if they don't know where they're going to go? Like, they're not going to get the F1 and stuff, like, these kind of like stigmas. And, nobody really, to be honest, it all comes down to nobody giving out the money and the support for these drivers. Yeah, it's a tricky question, because I would love to see not just the ones at the top of a grid. Like, I think this year especially, we have so many talented drivers on the grid. Like you said, it's not like when we had Abby Pulling and she was clearly the dominant one. There's more than like 3 people who are clearly really, really talented and could definitely get a seat in F3, F2. So I don't know. And it hurts me to not know, to not even like really put I think they'll go here. But what about you, Daniela? Where do you think? You know what? Actually, let me shorten into this. What do you think the prize is going to be this year?
Oh, I
It's
have a
tough,
feeling
isn't it?
yeah, it is tough because I don't know if GB3 are going to offer another seat again, or if that was more coming from Rodin, but I feel like Rodin set that up specifically for Abby. I think that was pretty obvious. She's been working with them for years. She was the driver that was going to win it. It was quite clear where this was coming from. Where with this year, we don't know who it's going to be. And yeah, I genuinely have like no idea, but I think possibly GB3 if they decide to go down that route again, which I wouldn't be like with the success that Abby has had. Like she started off her first weekend in GB3. Her first race, she did really well. She qualified really well, and then she unfortunately had a crash, which then meant that resulted in her car then not being up to scratch, and they couldn't figure out the problems. And then when they finally fixed the problem, she then comes out with a podium. So like she's had a mixed bag of a year so far, but ultimately like she's had some pretty good results and her first podium. So I would look, if I was GB3, I'd be like, okay, she'd been dealt kind of a bad hand, but has turned this around. Now, yes, I know one podium doesn't mean like she's done like really, really well and that we should base this all off of one podium, but I would kind of be looking at like how Abby handled this and thought, okay, maybe this is how F1 Academy is setting these drivers up. They know how to deal with these types of situations and ultimately are going to start to bring success. So maybe that could be a route that these drivers could go down. Ultimately, all of these drivers are going to want to progress from an F4 spec car to an F3 spec car. The problem is that these championships need to be more open to allow them in. So right now, I am going to stick with GB3, but that could very much change. Another option can be going into more of a developmental like role. So, for example, Formula E have kind of started to be interested in female talent. They've had testing days. They're going to have another testing day in October, which I believe a lot of the F1 Academy stars will hopefully, fingers crossed, be attending. And then from that have been getting into some more like sim and developmental roles. So both Abby Pulling and Bianca Bustamante, both ex-F1 Academy drivers, are now development drivers for 2 FE teams. So maybe that's something that these drivers are looking for, is like, okay, getting into a world championship running team where you can then be a part of that team and help develop the team, but also develop themselves as a driver, work on the sim, be connected in a new way that maybe they haven't been before. And yes, they've had backing from F1 teams directly, but not in the same way that it is if you're like an F2 driver being a reserve role for an F1 team or being a development driver for an F1 team. They're not, I don't think, they're having more opportunities than they did, say, in the first year of F1 Academy when F1 wasn't really that involved. But it's not to the point where it's beneficial, but it's not long term. Whether they were in F1 Academy or not, being in this kind of role isn't long term. But moving in more into the likes of Formula E and hopefully getting a seat elsewhere, whether that's FRECA, GB3, GB4. I know they want to progress more from F4 spec cars, but right now I think any of them would just take a seat somewhere because no seat is guaranteed. They could walk away from this having nothing. And that is what makes me frustrated because I'm like, what is the point of this championship if no one's going to progress? It's why W Series kind of failed. Coming from W Series' ultimately biggest fan, I do genuinely believe that W Series did fail because we didn't see progression. Jamie Chadwick won all 3 seasons and did not progress. She didn't get any further. It was until after kind of W Series had completely ended that then she went over to the States to go into Indy Next, and now is doing endurance racing. Like, all of that kind of came afterwards. Like, yes, she got involved with Williams from 2019, but she had to keep coming back to W Series because she had nowhere else to go. And I like the fact that F1 Academy has capped it to 2 years, but then what's meant to happen after those 2 years? Where are they meant to go? Because no championship seems to be like open for them. I feel like there is just such a flaw, like an absolute fault in this plan. Like there's no way that this can continue this way if we don't know what the drivers are ultimately going to win and where they're going to be next season. Because yes, F1 Academy is giving them a chance to drive, but maybe their career could be ending. But it might just kind of be slightly prolonging that game of their career ending a year or 2 later because they can't get a seat anywhere else. Would you agree with that, Yas? Do you think that that F1 Academy is kind of almost being a little bit detrimental to their careers because they're not giving them a pathway to continue their career? They're almost preventing it.
Yeah, 100%. This is something I've thought about quite a lot. Every time I watch F1 Academy or see even them on my Instagram or my TikTok, I go, this is great right now. This is great, all the attention that we've got on these women. But when that 2 years is up, where do we go from? Where do we go from here? And I know that this is still such a new series, but we need to start putting plans in place now of, okay, so where do we go from here? What happens next? What's going to be the prize? And what shocks me is that we still don't have one. Again, we've got 2 more rounds to go and we still don't know what we're doing. And these drivers don't know what they're doing, as in where they're going, I should say, not what they're doing. They know what they're doing. We saw in Zandvoort, they know what they're doing. I just get frustrated because I don't want it to end like W Series. I don't want it to be just 1 year, it's just done and we're back to square one of what's the future of female motorsport. Yeah, not to lower the mood or anything, guys listening, but it's just frustrating. I still can't believe that there's not really a pathway or an open space for women. And even in other series where a woman could definitely be there racing, we still don't see them there, and you still don't see the funding. And I don't want them all to just end up being development drivers or behind the scenes. I want to see a woman win a championship and be in there with the men as well. Yeah, I'm beaten up after thinking about all this.
No, I feel the same. Like I have such a complicated relationship with F1 Academy because I love the premise. I love the fact that we're showcasing female drivers. It's what made me fall in love with W Series because I then saw people doing something that I love and I thought, wow, I can go into that. Because a lot of things about F1 Academy and W Series isn't just about the drivers. It's also about all of the women that are behind the scenes too and champion them. And so that was what made me be like, wow, like I could go and do that. And so I did. But if we lose all of that and F1 Academy then kind of fails in a similar way to W Series, then I just feel like we're actually getting further and further away from the goal. Like, it feels like we're progressing. It's like one step forward and two steps back, because like, yes, if we compare it now to 2019 when W Series started, we have progressed. Like, things have changed. We've seen drivers be involved in more developmental roles with F1 teams, Formula E teams. Like, we've seen so much more success behind the scenes, obviously drivers themselves, but we still have a lot further to go. And unless F1 Academy start changing the narrative on this, and I really, like, they've got Susie Wolf involved, right? Surely, if there's anybody who can do that, it is her. Like, I trust that woman with my life. She has been an absolute game changer for women in this sport, without a doubt. I don't want to deny her that, because she has been amazing. So I have faith that something will come up, and she's probably working so hard now. Like, I can sit here and say all this stuff and like act as though she's not doing something. She probably is looking into this and trying to make a change, but we need that change to happen now, because otherwise these drivers are questioning what they're fighting for. And I hope that Susie is sat there working on it and finding a pathway for these drivers, because it will just get to a point where they get stuck. And we don't want that to happen. It happened to W Series. We don't want it to happen with this. I personally want this to be a place where drivers come to then move forward, not to come and get stuck and then everyone start hating women all over again, because we just constantly get put in that position. Same thing happened at the start of W Series, happened again at the start of F1 Academy, of like, these championships don't work. And F1 Academy need to work on a way to flip that narrative and say, yes, they do work. Look at all of the success of our kind of alumni, I guess, moving forward through and making their way up through different championships. Now, someone who's going to be thinking a lot about what their future is going to look like is Maya Weug. She currently sits second in the championship. She's 20 points behind Doriane Pin, and she had a stellar weekend. She, as I said, got pole for the second race, but not only that, in the first race, reverse grid, she's starting 8th. She made her way up to 3rd. Now, I feel like this is something we need to talk about, because there's one thing about constantly getting pole, being the fastest driver on track, getting fastest lap, starting on pole, taking the lead, creating a gap, winning the race. Obviously, that is brilliant, and I love it when a driver is able to maintain their consistency and be dominant, because it showcases how strong they are, right? But when you have something like the reverse grid come in and it flips the whole plan around, so that drivers are starting further down the field, you get to see the real talent of them being able to attack and defend, which is not what you get to see if they start first and finish first. And this is a concept that I love so much in junior racing. And I know, Yasmin, you've said this before, that you love the reverse grid, and we're both so happy that it's in the championship. But I kind of wanted to ask you, why do you think that this reverse grid has kind of changed the game for F1 Academy? And do you think that having the reverse grid and having like these opportunities for drivers to work their way up the field is going to make them stand out, especially someone like Maya, who's able to get pole position for one race and win that race, and then in the other race start further down but be able to make her way up to getting a podium? Do you think that makes her stand out because she's versatile? She can win races and she can get pole, but she can also attack and defend.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes, I do. It is. I just love the reverse grid. And if you hate the reverse grid in F1 Academy, what? Why are you even watching what we are watching? Like, I think it's, they just get, when the reverse grid happens, like, you just get to put your skills on display and be like, hey, I can just make my way up the grid here. And we saw, like, Maya Weug, she absolutely killed it this weekend. And, you know, from a fan's perspective, to get to watch her climbing her way up, all these overtakes, really battling up the grid, it's incredible. It's great. It's entertaining. And, you know, probably Maya herself was feeling like, oh, I got pole and I have to climb all my way back, all the way back up. But I don't care. It's really interesting for us to watch. And, you know, well done, Maya. She made a huge comeback from not really the best time in Montreal. So it's great to see her back where she belongs, winning these races, and she is just an incredible, incredible driver, and will definitely have a stellar career. I mean, even Lewis Hamilton posted a video of her going across the finish line, so it's great to see the amount of support she's getting. But the reverse grid, I really hope that it stays in place. And I know at the minute there's been a lot of talk about reverse grid happening for Formula One, and I don't know if it would work for Formula One, but it definitely works for F1 Academy. And, just having that shake up, I think it makes F1 Academy really fair. Everyone, no matter if you are at the bottom of the grid, at the top of the grid, you get your chance to show your skills. And that's what I really love about this series. And it's why we do this podcast, and it's why we are so passionate about it, because we do not want to see it die out. We don't want it to be another W series. And we want to see these women go far.
Absolutely, we do. And someone who also had some success this weekend, Leah Block. She got her first podium. Now, this is her second season in F1 Academy. She really struggled last year. It was her first time in single-seaters last year. And the start of this year as well wasn't, I think, how she was expecting it to go. I think she thought, right, I've learned a lot from my first year. I'm ready to tackle second year. I'm ready to kind of be heading towards the top of the grid. Ultimately, that hasn't been the case. But with the reverse grid, it meant that she was then getting to start further up and ultimately got her first podium, which is obviously a really special moment for her. How do you think this will affect Leah heading into the final 2 rounds? Do you think this is the boost that she needed? And do you think she can then end the season on a high?
Yeah, I think it will give her a bit of confidence. I know that in the second race, she did have a 10-second penalty. So that might have knocked her confidence a bit. But I mean, she's had such a better kind of season than she did last year, and I think she needs, and hopefully she does, kind of sit back and go, look, I'm making this improvement and this is what I need, and that she continues with that momentum into the last 2 rounds that we have, which is crazy to say, by the way. I can't believe we're on the last 2 rounds coming up, and it makes me even nervous thinking about it, that we're coming to the end of the season and these women need to kind of show themselves off, because you're only really better. You're the only best of your last race. So yeah, it's just a bit scary to think of. And Leah, go you, girl. I'm so happy to see some improvement. And I really hope that she does well in the last 2 rounds. I'll be definitely keeping an eye out for her.
Yes, I think that obviously it kind of got a little bit dampened by her 10-second penalty in race 2, which we'll come on to in a little bit. But I think overall she's going to have kind of come away from this weekend being like, look at where I started and look at where I am now. I've got 2 rounds left. This is the only time I have to prove myself. I've got 4 races to prove that I can do this. And I think this is going to give her the boost, the final push to end the season on a high. And yeah, so I guess we'll have to wait and see if that comes into fruition. Now, I think the biggest success story of the whole weekend, Nina Gademan. She was deemed unfit to drive in FP2. She went on to win her first race at her home Grand Prix on her birthday. How do you go from being undeemed to fit the day before to then winning your home Grand Prix on your birthday? Now, yes, it was reverse grid, so she started on pole. But she maintained that lead. She held on with every fibre of her body to be able to make it to that finish line and win. And I was so emotional seeing videos of her standing on that top set of the podium, bawling her eyes out, because I think she was in disbelief that she had won. Yaz, how do you think Nina felt in that moment? We don't know why she was deemed unfit, and I don't think we ever will, which is completely fine. It's a personal reason. We don't need to know. But do you think there was this sense of relief of like, I can't believe that I have gotten here and I've done it, and now I can just like relax. Obviously she has another race to do the next day, but that kind of feeling of like, wow, that was tough, but I've done it.
Oh my goodness, yeah. And I think it's kind of that fairy tale win for it to be on her birthday, for, she wasn't fit to drive, and then she was, and then to be in front of her home crowd and to win. It's just incredible. And like you said, she controlled that race, she held on, and I'm emotional thinking about it again, because when I was seeing all the posts on my Instagram and her on those top steps with the tears in her eyes, and like you can even see her like try and take these deep breaths and probably take it all in, like being at the top step at Zandvoort, of all tracks at Zandvoort. It's such an incredible track, and for her home crowd to be there. I mean, I'm sure she felt like Max Verstappen at that point. But I think just a perfect win for her, and well deserved. Yeah, I think just incredible, and go Nina. Hell yes, girl. Cheering for you. And hopefully we keep this momentum up. We see how she goes in the next 2 rounds, and yeah, incredible stuff.
She's definitely been a driver that I've had my eye on throughout the whole of this season, so I'm glad that she finally got the win that she deserved. But moving on to race 2. Now, as I touched on a little bit earlier, Chloe Chambers did not start. She got stuck on the grid before the formation lap. Now, being this close to where we are in the championship, that one must have hurt. 4 races left. And this is how she's kind of heading into that. A DNS is not kind of where you want to be right before your final 2 rounds. You're still in that fight. I think she's like 34 points behind Doriane Pin, and I think 14 points behind Maya. So she's like, she could still be in contention for that title, but she would have needed a podium more than anyone else to stay in that fight and to close that gap to Maya. And I imagine that she was feeling utter heartbreak. Yaz, I don't know if you saw clips of her on socials and stuff afterwards, and if you saw her post that she posted, but she was not very happy. How do you think this is going to affect her mentality heading into the last few rounds?
It breaks my heart watching her just not to have one race not work out. Okay, it happens, but I feel like with just kind of the entire weekend, it just wasn't her weekend. And that's bound to affect your mentality, especially, it's not like other race series where we have like very continuous races. We have these gaps. I can't remember when our next race is. I think it's October, our next race. So that's a month away. You've got a month to kind of replay, you being on the grid and all the cars going off and you can't get started, and just kind of all the things that didn't work out for her are going to just kind of be on repeat. I think it's different when you've got another race next weekend, so you can kind of pull it back. But yeah, she's got a month to just kind of think about the heartbreak and the points she could have gotten and the podium she could have gotten. And I really hope that Chloe's not too hard on herself, because she's done really well this year. She's had some incredible moments throughout the season, and I just really hope this doesn't affect her negatively. And that is so easy for me to say. But you can tell that it's hurt a lot. You could tell when she got back to the pit lane, and she just had her hands like in her face, and you can tell she was upset. And I would be too. I was upset watching her. So I really hope that she kind of can brush this off and let it be. What's happened has happened, and she can just bring it back and really kind of close the gap. I mean, it would be incredible for her to really get podium in October when we're in Singapore, and really tighten up the championship gap and really have it kind of down to the last couple of races. That would be incredible stuff. So, Chloe, you've got this, girl.
So I feel like there was a little bit of like a knock-on effect from Chloe's DNS, because that meant that Leah Block went to the wrong starting grid at the end of the formation lap. This led her to then get a 10-second time penalty, which obviously, as you've touched on, big disappointment from the success of the day before, not kind of how she wanted to go into like this round after having a podium and her best finish in the championship. But then, if the start couldn't have been more chaotic than that, Ella Lloyd got a 5-second time penalty for a false start. Now, she was in a constant battle with Alicia Palmowski for most of the race, and this is not the first time that we've seen the two of them battle it out. They seem to always find each other and always end up in a little battle, and it's just, they always seem to kind of be in their own little race, and I love that. I love seeing them race together because it always is, it gets quite intense quite quickly between the two of them, and this race was no different. So Alicia did get promoted to second, which then promoted Doriane Pin to third. This is crucial for the championship because, as I said, Doriane is 20 points ahead of Maya. If she hadn't have made it on the podium, I think Maya would have felt a little bit more at ease about the fact that she is definitely closing down this gap in the championship. As we touched on previously in Montreal, she didn't have the weekend that she wanted, so that meant that Doriane could kind of run with it a little bit more. But the championship is still all to play for. But knowing that now your biggest competitor who's leading the championship has made it onto the podium, there might have been or how I would feel, a slight kind of sour taste in my mouth of like, oh, she's really hunting me. Like, I need to close this gap, and I need to consistently be getting podiums and finishing first to keep Doriane at bay. Yeah, I don't know how this is going to play out, but I am very excited because when it seems like someone's kind of rolling with it, things change up very quickly. Now, Doriane didn't win a race this weekend, so that has kind of been able to keep her a little bit more at bay, especially with the success that Maya had. But how do you think the pair of them are feeling heading into the penultimate round? Both of them very eager to win the championship, both of them in their final season. Do you think we might start to see some mistakes from the two of them as the pressure builds up? Do you think it's going to get more feisty on track between the two of them? They seem to qualify near each other and start near each other and end up racing each other a lot. And they both are quite competitive with one another and definitely make some moves that could go wrong if they didn't handle it quite right. How do you think this is all going to play out in the next 2 rounds?
Ooh, spicy. I feel like they're both very headstrong women. I don't know if that's the right word to use, but I feel like a lot of the time throughout the season that they've managed to keep it all together and not let pressure kind of push them into silly mistakes. But I think if either one of them are going to make mistakes, it's going to be these next 2 rounds. And rightly so. I mean, like you said, all to play for. We are so close to the end, but everyone's kind of so close in points. So it's going to be really exciting to watch. And as much as I don't want to see, them crashing into each other in a big pile up, I would love to see some like moments where they're just tiny inches away from touching wheel to wheel action. And I think they're both such talented drivers that they'll be able to keep it clean, but you can never tell in motorsport. You can never predict anything in motorsport, no matter what series we talk about. There's always going to be a little thing here and there where you just can't predict it.
Speaking of predictions, who do you think is going to win the championship?
Oh, Daniela, why'd you ask me that? Oh. I'm going to say Maya. But you see, I swear, next round I'll go, no, Doriane. Like, I always go in between them two. I can never properly decide. So back to you, Daniela. Who do you think is going to win?
I'm going to say Doriane. I think that She is someone who, despite kind of having won like multiple races this year, you almost kind of, I feel like she's just like really sneaky. Like, even though you see her name a lot because she has won a lot, she is quite sneaky and just like comes when you least expect it. And so that is why I think that she's going to win it. I think she'll be able to be consistent. She's been consistent the whole season, so I don't doubt her. I think she can come in and take on. She knows what she needs to do, and I think she's going to do it. And this is not me hating on Maya at all, because I think Maya has been brilliant this season. I think she's really kept up their battle between the two of them. But I do think that ultimately Doriane is going to take it. With being 20 points ahead, if it was a little bit less, I would maybe say it is kind of likely that Maya could do it. But I think that right now, where we're sat, with only 2 rounds to go, I think Doriane's going to take it.
I'm remaining optimistic, and I'm going to say Maya's going to do it.
Maybe we should make a bet. What should the forfeit be of the person who gets this wrong?
Ooh. I do not know. Right, we have to think of something, and then next time we come back, we will tell you all what the forfeit is of who loses this bet.
Okay. I'm also thinking we can ask Brianna, and Brianna has to choose our forfeit.
Yes, that's even better. That's even better.
Okay, we shall do that. So, my final point. Wildcard entry. Esme Kosterman finished in 7th in the second race, which meant that she took points in her first weekend, which is the first time that a wildcard entry driver has taken points in their debut weekend this season, which I feel like is really interesting, because last year we had it happen a few times, but this year it's taken up until round 5 for it to happen. Do you think that maybe Esme may be a driver that we see on the grid next year?
I think it would be really stupid to not have her, because she put on a performance. She put on a show. Esme did incredible, and she was another one that just doing these incredible overtakes, and she was constantly being talked about on the commentary. And so I think it would be a real miss of talent, a real disappointment if we don't have her next year. And I don't see her not coming back. And I just have to say, I love these wildcard entries. I think it's such a great like little extra rule that we have in the F1 Academy series. It's incredible. I love going, oh, who do we have in Singapore, who do we have here, and just being able to see how they kind of slot in a random weekend amongst all these women who have been doing this all season. So I think it's very interesting to see.
Yes, I think that it's a very unique premise that a lot of championships don't have. And it also allows other sponsors to get involved with F1 Academy too, which means that hopefully some of these drivers can be continued to be sponsored by these companies in the future. So I think it makes it an interesting premise, and we get to see talent that maybe we wouldn't get to see otherwise. Esme Kosterman wasn't a name that I knew beforehand, so I'm glad that I now have a new driver to be invested in and see where their career takes them. But hopefully she'll be on the grid next year. Now, that is all I have for today, apart from one little anecdote that I wanted to share with you because I found it quite funny. Alicia Pamorski has a brilliant sense of humour. I would say she is probably the funniest girl on the grid. And if you haven't seen, and I highly recommend, this is just a little bit of like a recommendation from me, to go and check out a video on F1 Academy's social media of Alicia Pamorski getting to meet her favourite music group, Venga Boys, who are Dutch. They're a Dutch music group that performed during the Dutch Grand Prix weekend. And before the weekend started, Alicia was saying that she had heard that they were there and she would like die if she was to meet them. And then she did. And it's a really wholesome video that I thought just deserved mentioning. So if you have a spare 3 minutes and you want something that's going to brighten your day, I recommend going and watching that. But for now, that has been everything that happened across the Zandvoort weekend for F1 Academy. Thank you very much for listening, and we'll see you in the fast lane. Bye!
Fly chick coming through. Nice to meet ya, glad you came too. Like you